be a good idea if we start talking about prompt styles, and it's always a topic that is very much in demand, for sure, at all levels as well. And there is a sort of excitement about it, but at the same time, I can see from clients when I meet them, the very first sentiment that you can experience is very much around the prompting and how to approach the prompting subject, especially that there was this very gimmicky term that was added to it, prompt engineering. And that it gives it a complexity. I'm not going to say complication, because it is actually a complication for those who are not aware of how to approach the subject. And I think, Haitham, you bring lots of valuable insights into prompt engineering, especially that you're running a business that is AI-powered business, and that says that you do experience and leverage your prompt engineering skills every day, probably. So what can you do? What can you tell us about it? And what are the styles out there for prompting, and what use cases do they serve?
Well, first and foremost, I think one of the biggest kind of things that need to be considered whenever you're trying to prompt AI is, and this is gets neglected very often, is you can use the AI that you're interacting with a lot of the time, or another AI, to help you with the prompting process. So, for instance, when you're speaking with ChatGPT, you do not just give it a task and request the information. Instead, you give it an overview of a description of what's going on.
The context.
Yes, you give it the context of what's happening, the same way as you would any person. Then,
can you give me an example?
Okay, so for instance, I'll give you a very kind of let's say a mundane example. Let's say you're somebody looking for work at the moment, and you're looking to update your CV and change it, and you have a specific job that you're thinking about. So you provide ChatGPT with two things. You first tell it, this is what I'm doing. I'm applying for a job. This is the job title, and this is what I'm interested in. After that, you tell it, don't say anything. You will command it to not respond until I give you further information. So you'll tell it that you're going to give it the job description in X amount of parts. Mm-hmm. And you'll tell it that you're going to give it your CV in X amount of parts. After that, you'll ask it to, for example, ask me 10 to 15 questions that will help you best customize my CV towards this specific application for this job.
Mm-hmm.
By doing that, you will then be getting from ChatGPT any information that it's missing without having to kind of imagine it in your own head and figure it out. It's like having a person that's consulting with you, but you have to tell it to consult with you, essentially.
Yeah.
So you ask it, you answer these questions, and then from that point, that's when you start, okay, you can now start giving me an example of how I should adjust my CV or how I should convey myself in a cover letter. So that's going to...
What would you call that type of prompting? What would you call that type or style of prompting?
In terms of a name convention, I'm not aware of any that exist right now. It's still very brand new. So I don't want to coin a term for it, for example. But it is essentially just an iterative process, maybe iterative prompting. So you are very much engaged with ChatGPT to ask you questions back for it to be able to answer you properly. So that's why I would consider it an iterative process.
So here I am always, curious to understand a small piece of information that you were talking about. When we're creating the context and when we are telling ChatGPT, if we're using ChatGPT here, to ask us the questions that would allow us to understand more the JD, the job description, for example, and at the same time for us to understand what we need to bring more to our resume, so it can be selected as a good fit. Now, I think over here we're talking about having conversational capabilities and
Yes.
being able to utilize conversational skills.
Mhm. So it does come down to your ability to communicate. If you are unable to communicate information with a normal person, then you will struggle with communicating with ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So it is a balance of understanding what kind of things to ask it in terms of the algorithm wise, and still being able to communicate on a human level. Since it is, for ChatGPT, for example, specifically, is a very much a sentiment based AI analysis that's happening within language. It's a natural language processing interface.
Okay. If I were to put that into a test, for example, I am that person who's looking for a role, a job, an employment, and I wanted to actually uh, take to ChatGPT so I can make sure that my resume is optimized, so on and so forth. So, what would be an exercise that I can do offline, away even from ChatGPT, before I get there to understand the potential that I have to really mobilize ChatGPT? Wouldn't that be? I mean, I've always thought that if you can, uh, have a conversation with a friend and see, and see how deep does that conversation go, or how shallow does it remain, and what comes out of it. Uh,
Uh,
is that an exercise that can apply itself on
yes.
taking to ChatGPT? Because I try to sometimes I don't differentiate between talking to ChatGPT and talking to a normal human being. But what's your take on that?
Well, I think that's the important part. I think a lot of the time when people interact with ChatGPT, they naturally have this maybe subconscious action of differentiating that conversation from, say,
Yeah.
somebody. That is true to a certain extent, in where you do not. A lot of the time when you speak to the people you know, they will have existing context about yourself, or they'll have
Okay.
all that with already experience. So unless you give ChatGPT that experience, either by telling it you are an expert in X topic and you have this knowledge about these topics, and based on that, I want you to help me, then it does not have that ability to interact with you as a person. So you have to tell that first to make it a person,
Mm-hmm.
essentially, quote unquote. I very hesitantly say that. Uh, but you do have to give it that context of the situation that would not naturally exist in a normal conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, you do need to converse with it normally. Ask it questions, make sure it asks you questions back, since that is a flow of a conversation, as opposed to having it very one-sided.
Uh, whilst you were saying all of that, I took out a previous prompt
Hmm.
I had. Well, actually, it was a question rather than a prompt about the prompt styles.
Mhm.
Okay, let me read you out actually, and then you let me know which one would be uh, the one that would match what we were talking about. So
Absolutely.
basically here, it has divided the artifact, the answer, the output, the whatever we want to call it, to education and behavior analysis, and then what are the prompts that are within that
Mhm.
field. And then there's the technology and UI, or user interface. Then there's the creative and generative systems like DALI or GPT, psychological therapy and counseling. So clearly, context is everything here. And the very first thing that ChatGPT has put up there is that the style of prompting can differ depending on the context. And that
Yeah.
is exactly, Haitham, what you were referring to, and what you were talking about. And if I am read from the education and behavior analysis field, there is the full physical prompt, where we're guiding the learner's hands or body to complete a task, or a partial physical prompt, or a model prompt demonstrating the desired behavior, verbal prompt, visual prompt, providing a picture, gestural prompt, and where you're using a physical gesture to indicate the desired response, such as pointing or nodding. So as we can see, the prompts are very much to do with real life examples of actual behaviors, actual patterns of thinking, actual events. You know, it must be. It is from our world, and that's what I keep repeating, and I keep telling. You know, when consulting clients, is that you don't have to travel far in your thinking to try and understand how to navigate generative AI, whether you are you know, a junior employee or a C-suite. In both cases, you have to take yourself with you and then put yourself, all of yourself, in your thinking, cognitive capabilities, in your exposure, intellectual capabilities, and try to engage in a really intelligent conversation. So here, this is where things could go wrong, Haytham, and probably we talked about that before, but FT 2 days ago were reporting about bad prompting can lead to bad results, clearly, because at the end of the day, we have to understand always that generative AI, in its current phase and current sort of design, is not something that understands or thinks. It's something that is following a very, very defined mathematical, algorithmic
Yes.
sort of formula, and accordingly, it's providing you with generated results. So meaning that if you ask a dumb question, it will take that formula, the dumb formula, and give you a dumb answer.
Yes.
And the
Absolutely.
opposite is true. So how do you ask an intelligent question versus a dumb question? And that is something I would, if you don't mind, I would relate back to you and try to give an example or two on what is a bad or a dumb or a not so intelligent prompt, and then what is an intelligent prompt.
Okay, let's go back to the. Before I say this, I will caveat: a lot of what we're talking about right now is very specific to ChatGPT. As it was saying, for example, one of the tools we use to for sound inspiration is called Midjourney. It's an image generative AI. The prompting style on that is very, very different. It's a completely other way of thinking. We'll kind of get to that in a second. But if we take back the kind of example of the applicant that wants ChatGPT to help it with its application, the first way of doing it would be the smart way of engaging with ChatGPT. And I think engaging is the most important word. It's not good to think about it in terms of I am asking ChatGPT for a question, or I'm asking it for to do something specific. I am engaging with it towards a goal. That's how you can always make sure, if you're keeping in mind you're engaging with ChatGPT back and forth, you will get a smart answer and smart response and smart questions. But on the flip side, if I simply ask it, take an action, for instance, I am just asking it to, I am interested in a job, for example, at PwC with the role title of this. Please make me a CV. If it has no knowledge of your skills, it has no knowledge of the specific job description, requirements, etc. So you are leaving a bunch of context that even a normal human would answer incorrectly if you give him that question without that context. So always framing elements within the contextual application will make sure that you're getting these smart questions. So by asking smart questions is about making sure you're doing an engagement in process with the AI, as
Mhm.
opposed to making a request to the AI. To kind of steer a little bit to some other AIs, for example, at Midjourney. The bad prompt for Midjourney would usually be something like, create me an art piece for that has a picture of a duck. You are very unlikely to get if you have a specific image in mind, you're very unlikely to get that image that you're looking for from that prompt. However, if you say you have an idea of a specific picture that you want, you use that picture, and then you tell it, you can link it within the prompt, and you tell it, look at this picture. I would like it to have X, Y, and X or Y level of detail. I would like the options you generate to have this amount of randomness. I want them to vary widely or very narrowly. You can use that depending on how close the original image is. And you'll always be able to use the images that the AI generate, whether they're closer or farther away, to then prompt it again. So again, it kind of goes back to that iterative process, that engagement process, as opposed to what a lot of people might do naturally is, oh, this is a bit of technology. I just want to ask it. I want to get my answer back. That's not how you're going to get the most potential out of this technology. Engagement and iteration is the name of the game here.
So here we have two styles of prompting, and then engagement is one, and the iterative prompting is another. And I would really encourage anyone who is curious and interested to try and diversify the different ways of prompting to explore iterative, and it does provide lots of encouraging results and lots of promising results because and it allows you to move in a very small and calculated steps in terms when it comes to that iterative prompting, and especially if it's a topic where you're not very aware of,
Yes.
and you're still either developing some knowledge around it, or you are completely unaware of the details of that topic, subject matter, whatever it is. But it's a very valid insight when we talk about iterative and engaging prompts, and to be able to use and utilize that technology uh, uh, with with maximum output and minimum minimum well, impurities, if I want to put it in a way, and that would actually make us trust it more and make us enhance its output more,
And if I can just
which is.
quickly add, for a lot of where the prompt engineering part comes in is from a business situation. What I would say is if you are a more advanced user, one of the things that I would always recommend doing is whenever you find a prompt that, for example, if you are looking for a specific piece of information, whether it be like a research within a certain field, or for example, you're trying to prompt certain imagery or art from an image generation AI,
Mhm.
always take the specific parts of the prompt that kind of define the quality, realism, or whatever other different variables you use to generate the image that you ended up liking, and use those and store those in some form of database or list, because you will be using them more in the future. And a lot of these AIs do allow you to kind of create prompt presets where you can save the preset and kind of apply it, so you don't have to kind of remember. Say you want, we personally use this within Midjourney. Say we want something with realism, but we want it to have futuristic imagery in it. We'll have a specific preset. We'll save that, and we'll just save it as futuristic realism, for instance. So that kind of thing will save you a lot of time in the future. Be aware that looking through the documentation, I know this might be asking a lot for some people, but if you're doing this for business, it is worthwhile. Going through documentation, the people or the companies that created the AIs will have certain terms that you can also
Mhm.
tweak.
Yeah.
Randomness is a very common one. You'll also find when image prompting, realism is also very. So those are usually edited by figures. So a specific number or a specific range of numbers that you can use to kind of, and always consider that. So if you're not getting the specific image or answer that you're looking for, adjusting those will always help. So refer to the documentation within that the companies create for this. You'll find a lot of information about things that you can refer to when prompting.
And I think also, since you're dealing and you're using ChatGPT or you're using a generative AI, then clearly don't start the prompting without knowing. And knowing is essential for you to be able to put a very good question or a very good prompt. And let me elaborate a bit more on what do I mean by knowing. So if you are trying to prompt about, for example, I'm just going to jump offline. My age always, would take my brain to an offline environment, which I always try to mix. And I don't see anything wrong with that, because I believe that one is the mirror of the other. So imagine going into a barber, someone who and you want a haircut. So it's the first time you get into this barber shop. You've never been there before. They don't know you. And then you sit there and say, "Cut my hair." Right? So now, okay, two things that are going to happen. One is that the barber most probably is going to use the easiest method approach to deliver that, so he can make a quick buck. You're out of the way. The next customer would come in. Now, the other thing is that you will be disappointed. Okay, but if you go back and you ask yourself, why did that happen? Well, I did not tell the guy anything, and the guy turns out that he doesn't ask. But that is exactly what the technology we're using.
Yes.
It's not expected to ask you. However, now the good news. So we close this segment. The good news is now with all of these plugins that are there in the store, they are bringing those questions, and they are bringing those responses, and trying to make you become more detailed in your prompts. So if you ask for an article to be written, they're going to ask you, what kind of a headline do you think that article should have? And then they're going to ask you if you want it to be SEO compatible. And then they're going to ask you so on and so forth. Depends on the plugin that you choose from the store. But this is what these plugins are offering. They're offering that questioning, that would actually make you be more pronounced and make you be more detailed about what exactly do you want to get. And let's remember here that generative AI is not about providing you. It's not a search bar and or a search engine, and it's not going to provide you with the same answer in 2 times in a row. That is not going to happen. So basically, it's all about nuance, and that is exactly what differentiates one human from another. It's the nuance that you add, and that is why, if you are self-aware, one, if you are knowledgeable about the subject matter, two, you'd be able to really try and run this technology in a much more constructive and much more fruitful way, and trying to really sign it and create a new nuance there. That is you, and that is what you're valued for. Yeah. This is why you're valued. You're valued for, you and I both say good morning to each other when we meet each other. We say good morning to everybody but some people talk about the funny good morning, or the funny way of you saying good morning, or me or myself, because it's different. That's the nuance we're talking about. That is the nuance, because you bring yourself to it. There's a professor at the London Business School that used to always say, to us during that course, be yourself but more. And that means just, if you're sweet, be sweeter. If you are smart, be smarter. If you are just be more of what people see you as. And then this is what will make you really sign things, and make them yours, and get ownership over things that are very much available everywhere. But
Yeah.
it's very interesting to look at that, although it's all over the place. And we know at Entergate and Haiku that every day you have hundreds of videos that are coming and talking about prompt engineering and all of that. It's a huge topic, and it's a must-have skill. And I believe that everybody will be able to do it within few years. But what I saw there, the pattern, Haitham, that I saw, or the change, the shift, I would like to simplify it to this, and then we can move on to something else. It's moving from you as an employee in the business environment, from commanded to commander.
Yeah.
And that is not an easy shift in any way or form. To be able to give commands and not take commands and then go and do it is a big shift.
Yeah.
And this is what we try to really attend to and take into consideration as we are onboarding people in an AI transformation journey, that we don't take it lightly at all. And especially when we're talking about generations, and we talk about the different generational attributes, you'd face much more difficulties with generation X, Y, than you do with millennials and the ones that came after. And but that's the reality of life. But always the good news is that now we know. So
Yeah.
I always say to CEOs, we're going to have to move your employees from being commanded to being commanders. And that is no easy task. Not only that, it will change the KPIs, it will change the whole conduct and the whole behavior of the
Yeah.
company. And you got to be ready to see amazing things happening, because when people, no one would be able to become a commander if they don't have self-confidence, if they're not self-aware, and if they're not applying critical thinking. And that is the best thing that you will have as a result of an AI transformation, is that your staff, your caliber, is a caliber that can really take on big challenges and bring it on, as they say, to anything that is going to come their way in terms of challenges, turning them into opportunities, and then using technology, GPT, to augment their capabilities and to really, sort of do a transaction at a much faster frequency pace, and at the same time, efficiency increases by folds and folds. So I just wanted to say that. I hope it wasn't too long to explain, but it's a topic that is worth that we really give different examples about it, to be able to capture the attention of those who are really interested in it. Yes, Haitham. As I said, it would be good to also talk about something else, and something that is fresh, clearly. I've been recently been involved with a project that involves edtech, or education technology. And in particular, there is this whole thing about AI coming to the educational industry, or the education industry. And if I'm going to be more particular, I'm going to talk about the UK in particular. where Entergate is based and where I live as well. And with that, as I said, I got involved in a project, and then I tried to understand how's AI involved within the education industry. And I thought maybe we can talk about it very quickly, talk about it generally, because I don't have all the details yet that would make that subject cooked enough or ready for it to be digested as is. So, however, what the insights that I was able to generate at the exploration phase are also something things that are important that anyone who's in that field should take into consideration. So the very top insights that I came across are the fact that in that industry, particularly, you have lots of sensitivities, right? And those sensitivities have to do with the output of that is expected out of academic and educational institutes. So, meaning that AI there has two roles to play. One would be on driving that school as a business, or helping that school to apply very efficient processes and procedures, using AI. So it is a successful business that is able to always generate revenue if they are for profit, or to stay functional and to stay able to survive. Now, financially and economically. Now, moving on to the other part, the other side. The other side is to do with how do they use AI to enhance the output and the experience for the actual students. And I think this is where it becomes a bit concerning in certain areas, but then there are lots of benefits in other areas. So, for example, if we talk about computer vision, which is clearly a key component and a key benefit or a key attribute of AI, that is still controversial. So, how will you use computer vision with students, underage individuals, 1, 2, basically such data becomes a burden, a liability on the school to keep it, to maintain it, to safeguard it, and make sure that it is not leaked. And then where do you do it? So if we are talking about the classroom, and if you want to see and make sure that every student is really understanding the subject matter, and the teacher is actually able to convey the information and that they're trying to explain, and that the student is showing a sign that they are on board, right? This still needs to be cracked on how much can a school take in terms of data using AI. So if we talk about now computer vision, now if we're talking about pattern recognition, so I'm gonna try and forecast your performance in regards to a certain test or exam, GCSEs, as these are what happens here in the UK or any British curriculum school around the world. So GCSEs, if the school wants to anticipate and forecast the performance of a particular X student in their GCSEs, okay, by inputting all of their results that came from previous tests, all of the notes and all of the comments that they have received from the teacher and everything. Okay. The question is that as this student is still developing and their cognitive and physical skills are still building up, would it be a good, wise step to do so, or do we create an actual create an actual environment for them that they become hostage to? Meaning, I tell you, you're not great in math.
Mhm.
And then now, look at we did a sort of analysis, and then looking at your behavior and your performance for the last 6 years, math is not your thing. So we advise you to focus on languages, for example.
I see.
Now, that can put you hostage into that sort of conclusion. And how much, the question is, how much credibility, how much trust, and how much weight should we give such practices? Because these are practices that can happen today in terms of pattern recognition. Every school has a data source of that kind that they can take to AI and then use that data source. And it's considered integral data. It has high level of integrity. What kind of bias is there? We can sit and discuss the bias that this data might have and then try to clean it up, blah, blah. However, that is something there. And one of the results could be this. And this could put that student in a place that they shouldn't be, because past has told us that there's a lot of what we call as school dropouts that came out to be really genius in what they do, or very successful in fields where the school said, oh no, these guys are not going to make it. I mean, Albert Einstein is one big example, and of what happened with him when he was in Lausanne studying there, and what his teacher said about him. But then look at what happened. So how do you think we should be mitigating that, and how should we make it safe for both students and teachers, and actually add to that the school itself, to integrate AI capabilities without compromising, without having such compromises?
Well, first and foremost, the specific implementation of AI in the method of monitoring activity during class or performance on test and then using that as a feedback. The reason why that risk exists of it kind of breaking down or potentially leading someone towards or eliminating, let's say, future options for people is because we are not using the AI to change the educational assessment method. We are using the AI to do the assessment method. What I mean by that is, instead of, for example, revising and say, okay, instead of having standardized testing at the end of the year, the standardized testing will take another form of, beyond just the homework, coursework, etc. You will be provided a opportunity to use AI to perform these tasks as a student, as opposed to being assessed by it. And the assessment that is done by the AI they will assess your work with AI and your work without AI. That can show that certain students have the capacity to use or extract knowledge, even if they don't have that knowledge within themselves. And that's an important skill that, at the moment, schooling system does not, especially below university level, you do not take into account research capabilities really that highly. And it's not something that we develop. So AI can open up a method of testing students and training them in that capacity at a much, much earlier stage and exposing them to having that capability. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think having the same assessment method and implementing AI on top of it, that's kind of where we go wrong. It's a matter of changing the assessment.
Are you saying we're just adding a layer to something that instead of using really technology that usually comes to take out layers. We're just adding another layer now, and then making it more complicated rather than more complex.
Yes, there's. I don't see a direct added value by maintaining the same assessment framework and just having AI doing it. Not for the student, at least. I can see it for the
Hmm.
school; it'll save them time and money. But if our focus is the betterment of the student's education, that is honestly a very mute activity to enhance student education. I'll give you my cousin. He's a smart student. He's okay, but he struggles with certain aspects of math. So I do go and teach him from time to time. And what I tell him in terms of how to practice with AI is instead of looking, for example, online for example questions, which can sometimes be misleading, or like from another level, or it's hard to
Hmm.
find, or it takes you time looking for the questions instead of answering them. I
Hmm.
tell him, speak to ChatGPT, tell him you have questions about this topic, tell him what your grade level is, and ask him to generate a bunch of different questions for you.
Hmm.
After it generates the questions, ask it, I answered questions one, two, and three. Can you please, this is the answer that I got. This is how I got it. Can you please tell me where I went wrong? So we're taking the entirety of the education and being aware of what's the correct answer and the wrong process and putting it in the hand of the student. We're empowering them instead of just forcing them
Yeah, yeah,
into
yeah,
answering
yeah. I
questions
see.
blindly. So you're giving them more tools in that way, as opposed to when the school, for example, just wants to assess students. Just assessing is the schooling system arose from the need for factory workers at the time being. It
100%.
has been having a need for a big change for quite a while, and I think the
And
AI,
soldiers.
yeah. So we need to kind of implement that as soon as possible and move a little bit away from the kind of robotic thinking, ironically, of having the human think like a robot and letting the human think like a human and utilize the robots.
You're being too generous when you say robotic thinking, because I think the second we put the word robotic thinking is jumps out of the window.
Hmm.
And I do agree with you here that clearly there's a big or a very valuable opinion that is represented by many scholars and academians and intellectuals and anybody who's who's expert in the subject matter that talks about the current curriculums in schools, whether in developed economies or developing economies, that at the end of the day, it's not very different from what Roger Waters and Pink Floyd tried to tell us back in, The Wall, and that song about, the very famous song, The Wall,
Hmm.
uh, talking about or using the educational system in the UK to refer to the fact that it is designed and engineered to get sort of robot-like humans out of it.
Yeah.
And that hasn't changed a lot. That
No, no.
hasn't changed a lot. And unfortunately, we see how the curriculum is not anymore able to catch up with the new realities that the world is creating, that technology and the industry is creating. Whilst they are falling behind, they're becoming also more possessive of that style, and then more resistant to change. And that is turning off lots of students
Mhm.
from, the fact that um, you are learning about things that either the information is redundant or there is no need for such sort of
Yeah.
information in today's world. Even my generation, we experienced that, and it hasn't changed, and that's really, really a big question. I mean,
Let me
to
just
academia.
uh, let me just add. I think especially this is now we're just talking about the education system in general. If a student leaves a school hating a specific topic, in my personal opinion, the school has failed overall. It should not be
100%.
possible to hate knowing something, right? Unless you were taught it or enforced to learn it in a very wrong way. So I think that plays a big factor that kind of, as you were saying, resonates with the origins of how that works. And now we need to look at how we can use this new technology that increases the capacity of teachers to do lesson planning, to do better and more representative skill level questions. For example, like you can now break up. Say you are giving exams. You can assess each person's level. Somebody gets a 20, somebody out of 20, somebody gets a 15. You can start giving the person that gets a 20 out of 20 questions that would actually push them a little bit further in their own like custom exam every time you have an exam session, as opposed to having the same exam for everyone. And the person that has a 15 out of 20, they can have a slightly easier exam that will just challenge them just that little bit enough so they can get a little bit more advanced. And by
Mm-hmm.
that way, you are kind of allowing them to each student to progress at their own rate within one classroom. And that's kind of the potential of AI that's not being utilized at the moment. Lesson planning, more adaptive examination per individual, more adaptive homework, etc. All those kind of elements, AI makes that so much quicker to plan and add
Mm.
that you don't have to have like a team of 20 teachers working in one classroom to do it as you would have had just a couple, let's say like 2-3 years ago.
But you see, Haitham, that is partly true. But I would put a small note there. In the UK, students are divided to different sets based on their capabilities, and uh, yes, I mean the student who's in a top math set does not do the same test of a student in a foundation
Yes, yes.
set. However, back to your point, is that UI could be used to actually go into more customizable solutions rather than a template that applies to those in the foundation set. And
Yeah,
then me as a teacher thinking that all of those in the foundation set can actually work from the same template. And we know that this is not true. We
yeah,
know that no human is like another human in terms of understanding, in terms of anything, right? So
yes. I'll
some would benefit and some, and we always look at that, what we call the, yeah, well, it's 10% are going to fall out of the wagon and then 90% will make it.
it's
But
not good enough.
is it, don't we always say one is too much?
Yes,
So,
yes.
but we keep saying that, but when it comes to practice, we're ready to sacrifice this
Yeah.
one. We're ready to sacrifice this 10, 20, 30, 40%. Why? In presence of new technology, I don't believe schools in the 21st century, talk about schools here, can justify that they're not tailoring and customizing their lesson planning to suit the capabilities of that particular student and that particular teacher in terms of uh, how capable are they
Absolutely.
in providing that very important, crucial part
Mhm.
of the people's lives as in their foundation stage, which is going to school. So
Well,
that was, yeah, that was actually a part of the discussion that I had with the school, that I am involved in trying to prep them up to become AI powered school, and they're keen on bringing in AI technology to really make sure that their students are receiving uh, uh, tailored learning experience, and at the same time they are keen on creative learning. And then what I liked about that school is that they don't use teaching or uh, education; they use learning. So they really understand the fact that learning starts with the student, not with the teacher talking, but with the student understanding. And as long as you're not able to make sure that the student is learning, then you haven't done any teaching yet.
yes, yeah.
And that is what's important about that sort of action.
Mhm.
Do we teach or do we learn? And
Yes.
then teaching is for the previous generation. Learning is for the new generation. And for valid contextual reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll definitely be seeing a shift over time. I do believe some schools are starting to implement kind of that more adaptive education format. It does tend to be a lot more private school, and since we're talking about it's a lot more private schools, and Nordic schools, quite frankly, are like kicking ass at the moment when it comes to that. They're very, very good at that, integrating that type of element. But over time, we do think it is very, very feasible to kind of have a kind of government school education like kind of application or platform to integrate those capabilities and provide it for every school, as well as having just much better view when it comes to people applying for universities, A levels, jobs, etc. That will kind of show somebody's progress ability as opposed to somebody's flat output in that potential. So you can maximize on progress ability for fields that require that dedication.
Yeah, that is true. And then, just to close that segment as well, unless you have anything to add, Haitham. What I have also seen as an opportunity in taking AI to schools um, is the space and the environment that AI offers, or Gen AI offers the students in terms of questioning, something that they cannot really do a lot of, especially in bigger classes,
Yes.
because there isn't enough time for that. And when I say questioning is trying to critically understand a certain set of information or scientific formula, or to a level that sometimes the teacher herself or himself are not able to
Yeah.
address. And two, it is the fact that they can come together to create one sort of argument slash conversation with ChatGPT, if they're using ChatGPT. And that's what we're trying to do in that school, to create an AI lab where the students can be in groups, and they are gonna work together to help each other and try to put the best prompts. And the prompts will always depend on their critical thinking and their knowledge, and then they will be in a way trying to not compete, because we don't. This is not a race, but to try and start understanding that the level of your knowledge will decide the answer, as we talked before, and that makes them more um, aware of the value of the knowledge that the school is trying to pass on to them, on what that, if put in the right path, in the right process, what it can provide them with in terms of ideas. So we're going to provide them with problems that are within the community, that where the school is, whether it's the park, or whether it's the library, or whether it's the main high street, and then ask them to come together and use the knowledge that they have, that they've received from the school, and try to prompt Gen AI to give and suggest different solutions, and then discuss those solutions amongst themselves, and to keep taking that into a more constructive this discussion that can, at the end, aid them to come back with a proposal. And we're talking here about students who are 15 plus. So you have started, help them to start taking responsibility, but without creating a trap system for them where they're going to fail at every corner of that, and then telling them, you failed because of this and that. Actually, trying to make sure that there is something that's going to pick them up whenever there is a chance that they won't achieve that, because achieving is way more important than failing, although failure is important, but achieving also teaches us a lot. Anyhow, so that was the direction that the school is going with, and Entergate, together with Haiku, will be very involved in that, and will put that school on the right path, making sure that all of this is aligned with the UK education sort of uh, policies and criteria, with zero compromises when it comes to the benefits that students can realize. And that is really the aim, and that is the direction that we're taking.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also that the development of that critical thinking ability, this actually kind of leads us into our next topic very smoothly. It does kind of build up as you kind of go through the education system of A level and university and even at work. So in the kind of the medical field, where there is a lot of current AI being integrated,
Mm-hmm.
now we have a lot of machines that are kind of automatically being having AI kind of within the machine to kind of help the surgeon. And the surgery process, for instance, ENT, ear, nose, throat machines, they will have certain scanners and what do you call them? Sensors.
Sensors.
Yes, yes, with implemented within the actual operational mechanism that will notify the surgeon as he's doing the surgery. Those kind of little elements and being able to kind of have that being used to them, being used to having machine feedback from an early education level does make the skill ceiling for people much, much higher. And beyond that, the general implementation, for example, within the insurance sector of
Mm.
AIs to be able to predict, to assess somebody's risk for medical risk, etc.
So to do the
Having
underwriting for them, basically
yeah,
to help with the underwriting, and then identifying the risk.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. So it makes it it all builds up since this technology is being used in those real world scenarios. As you say, with the underwriting, with the assessment of the profit margins, risk margins with certain insurance patients, with the assessment of hospital insurance in terms of its performance, all those elements come from using data. And without
True.
having the link between the early education system and, in this specific situation, the medical system of utilizing data within those different stages, you will kind of be thrown into a job having not seen this thing being implemented in any way that's remotely similar to what you're
Hmm.
interacting with. It creates a divide that does not that should not exist if we want to keep progressing, keep developing society as a whole. For the for a bit of a specific scenario, I'm currently working with a local hospital who's doing a bit of an expansion. And one of the key things that they're looking to integrate AI into is the patient portal that's being developed.
Yeah.
So, as opposed to having just the assessment that they use internally for the patient risk for certain diseases, etc., they're kind of opening that up and enabling the patient to see the risk factors of those of based on his history. So information that usually would have been reserved for insurance providers and hospitals behind very closed doors and not having sorry, not wanting transparency with that becomes,
So
because of the
yeah.
lower cost barrier with the newer technology, it becomes much more easier to justify the accessibility for the patient to it. That way, the patient treatment gets enhanced. For instance, they
Yeah.
can take lifestyle measures that can be recommended by the AI that's looking at those information to help them with their potential risk of certain diseases. They
Hmm.
can start scheduling automatic follow-ups. All those types of elements get opened up by using this technology in that patient portal.
Tell me something here. It's very interesting that when we're talking about this field in particular, because we always read and hear about the fact that the cultural, geographical location of a patient does play a huge and significant role. So when
Yes.
we talk about AI generated health and well-being sort of tippers on okay, so uh, we suggest you walk whatever half an hour every day, eat more whatever vegetables and less red meat and all of that. So that seems to differ from clearly from one culture to another.
Mhm.
As a Mediterranean, I'm predisposed to high cholesterol, even if I'm vegetarian, right? And
Yes.
vegan, even not vegetarian, vegan. So, as a European, okay, is not exposed to lactose intolerance the same way a non-European is.
Mhm.
So, uh,
Well,
was that part of the discussions that you were having with this medical facility?
this comes into where there is the big caveat with AI
Mm,
data. The data about the effects of the predisposition of different races, the predisposition of people from within the same race but of different socioeconomic groups. Those
true,
elements can have significant impact on somebody's health, somebody's ability to treat
true,
health, and somebody's ability to take action on health recommendations. You cannot recommend something a factory worker to walk 10,000 steps a day when they're already working all day, even if they are significantly
true.
overweight, compared to, for example, say a desktop person. So those kind of elements are we still need to develop significant amounts of data to be able to make recommendations based on them, especially when it comes to health. The safety aspects of any recommendations have to be filtered through the eyes of a practicing physician. So while the recommendation aspect can be automated,
Hmm.
having too many recommendations in the current state where we do not have enough data about the how race plays factor into medical recommendations or how socioeconomic status plays factor into it will overcome the system in this specific scenario.
Mm.
So as the kind of world progresses, as we start incorporating this technology, we can start capturing that data and then using that to reinforce and train the AI further to then potentially incorporate it as a feature
Mm.
of the recommendation systems there. However, again, especially with medical systems, I would be adamantly against incorporating it with the limited amount of data that currently exists.
Mm. That's a very vast subject, clearly, and lots will happen in that, and lots of progress will come along the way. And we only hope, and we will always work as people involved within the tech and AI scene to push ethical practices of AI, and not only that, but those that are really put the goal of benefiting man, benefiting human in that context, um, happiness mainly, not
Mhm.
only a physical benefit, but clearly where they can add to the happiness index, uh, if there is one, and I hope there is. Um, One last point to close this podcast today, unless you have anything else to add, something that I thought about whilst you were talking now. Is there anything, Haitham, you'd like to say, or shall I close with this and then we
No, no,
call it off
I
for
think
today?
that kind of covers it.
Hmm.
Hopefully, if we can publish potentially some case studies about this in the future,
Hmm.
but I think for the time being, this kind of gives a good overall review. So go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean that is very much to do with it's a personal sort of opinion or insight that I always think about when we talk about anything digital, and then
Mhm.
what makes a digital transformation successful, or what makes an integration of AI successful. There is a term of four letters: data, DATA. That is what makes things happen when it comes to technology. And yeah, okay, that is all good. But now, as I said, this is a personal opinion, and it might be a trivial one, but it's something that I saw, an observation, nothing more, nothing less. In Arabic, we call the human insan, and some scholars have argued that insan comes comes, insan meaning human, the root term for that is the fact forgetting,
Mhm.
forgetness, meaning
Wow.
meaning that we don't remember everything, and that is a fact. Our memory is very selective, and our memory would mainly, as per my understanding, pick those things that help us survive,
Mhm.
not necessarily grow or persevere, survive, because that is
Yes.
the purpose. So, whilst whenever we come back to AI and digital and all of that, it's all about not letting anything go. Do, do you see what I mean?
Yes.
Sometimes you don't want to be that observant. Sometimes you don't want to log in everything. Sometimes you just don't even remember everything. And that is there for a reason. That is there for sanity. Now, the question here is, who is more prone to do that culturally? And is that a correct question? I come from a culture because of my other nationality, which is Lebanese. You know, you don't want to remember the past sometimes, you know, because it's not something great that you want to remember
Yeah. Yeah.
in terms of all the, whatever happened. And however, in if I want to look at the standard approach of AI and digital, if we don't bring in data, and that means something that happened before, we won't be able to really use it to understand a bit of the next coming future. So here's a kind of all right, do we want to be insane or do we want to become something else? And and that's a huge question. Although I don't know of any other language, not that they don't have it, I don't know of it, that gives human that descriptor in the name that
Mhm.
defines human. That the
Yes.
number one most significant attribute that a human has for people who speak Arabic, a 5 million words language, one of the most sophisticated in the world, together with Mandarin. Okay. And they say that this is a forgetful being. That's
Mhm.
exactly what insane means, a forgetful being. Whilst digital and everything is saying you shouldn't forget anything, you should log in everything, right?
Yes. Yes.
In order to get a more sound analysis and more sound. Anyhow, that's a question. I don't have an answer. I don't claim to have an answer for that. It's just, something in between that travels between culture, between language, between history and present. And that
Mhm.
is something that I think it's legitimate to have such thoughts and think about them. So
Absolutely. I think
here,
it's just to be there. That is very, very much a human nature type of thing. I think a lot of the technology elements is always about circumventing certain elements of human nature. It's funny you mentioned the forgetfulness. I am somebody that literally has a database of people that are in my life, and I put in like age, where they work, university, what food they like to snack on, what sizes they wear,
oh
etc.
wow,
I don't
okay.
have to forget any of that stuff for like if you're buying a gift, if you're interacting, etc. So it is a very interesting point because I personally spend a lot of personal time in developing systems just literally for my personal life to circumvent that aspect as much as
Mm.
possible. So I do think it will be an interesting thing to see what people think and what kind of things they do about their personal life that kind of reinforce or go against that in terms of the human aspect of it. So we'll see.
We'll see. I mean, is it really a good thing that you can never forget? I don't know, but something's gonna remind you. I mean, we already have it around us. Huh?
Yes,
When
yes,
when you look at your pictures or your library, or that is exactly doing that, right?
yeah,
It's bringing back memories, and then it's bringing back thoughts, and it's bringing back things that you thought they're behind you, but then all of a sudden they're right in front of you on a screen.
yeah,
Now, add to all of that your school performance, add to that your work performance, add to that your everything. And then you're like, oh, how can I? So we wait and see, and then try to understand how that is going to unfold. Anyhow, I think that was a very interesting discussion out there. We talked about um, we talked about education or AI in education. We talked about prompting, and yeah, we leave that question with you guys. And then we clearly talked about AI in healthcare and the technology there between hardware, being the sensors and the cameras, and the algorithms and the design, the transformers, and what they can help with. So a lot of things were said, and let's, if anything, any inquiry coming back, we're happy to expand on it, and we're happy to provide structured details and understanding of it for those who are interested in the subject matter and they would like to go further depth. We're happy and we're here to help. So just let us know. Thank you very much, Haysam and
Thank
Haiku.
you. Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye.